First contact's consequences. Commander Eliza Hayes stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, her weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of tactical displays. At 43, she carried the confidence of someone who had seen humanity's expansion across the stars from its earliest uncertain days. The Indomitable represented the pinnacle of human military engineering, sleek, powerful, and equipped with technologies that were still classified even to most of Earth Command. Contact bearing 270, Commander. Lieutenant Seto called from the sensor station. Configuration unknown. Not matching any registered signatures in our database. Hayes nodded, her steel-gray eyes narrowing as she studied the approaching vessel on the main view screen. The ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of the Indomitable, with an organic, almost crystalline structure that pulsed with internal light. First contact scenario, she said evenly. Standard protocol. Open hailing frequencies across all bands and prepare translation matrices. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, but Hayes felt a familiar tightness in her chest. Humanity had encountered 7 alien species since achieving faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. 5 of those encounters had been peaceful. 2 had not. No response to hails. Commander. Communications Officer Diaz reported. But they're scanning us. Intense energy sweeps across all spectrums. Hayes frowned. Defensive posture. Shields at 40%, enough to show caution without appearing aggressive. The alien vessel continued its approach, moving with a grace that belied its enormous size. Then, without warning, it fired. A brilliant pulse of energy lanced out from the crystalline ship, striking the Indomitable's shields. The human vessel shuddered under the impact. Shields holding at 35%, Lieutenant Commander Okafor reported from engineering. Single shot, likely a calibrated test of our defenses. Hayes' expression hardened. So that's how it's going to be. Return fire, phase cannons only. Target their weapons array. Precision strike. The Indomitable's cannons fired, the energy beams precisely striking the alien vessel's weapon emplacements. The bridge crew watched in silence as the beams appeared to be absorbed by the crystalline structure, causing it to glow brighter. No apparent damage, Sato reported, surprise evident in his voice. Their hull seems to be converting our energy weapons somehow. Hayes allowed herself a thin smile. Interesting. They've evolved defenses against energy weapons. She tapped her console. Tactical, load kinetic penetrators. Sometimes the oldest solutions work best. The alien vessel fired again, this time a sustained beam that pushed the Indomitable's shields to their limit. Shields at 18% and failing. Okafor called out. We can't take another hit like that. Evasive pattern Delta, Hayes ordered. And fire kinetic penetrators, full spread. The Indomitable banked sharply, executing a maneuver that would have been impossible for most ships its size. As it turned, it launched a volley of tungsten rods, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed by the ship's mass drivers. The primitive projectiles struck the alien vessel with devastating effect. The crystalline structure, so effective at absorbing and redirecting energy, shattered under the kinetic impact. Direct hits, Sato reported, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. We've damaged their propulsion and weapons systems. Hayes nodded, but kept her focus on the view screen. Don't celebrate yet. That was too easy for a species capable of building a ship that size. As if in response to her caution, the alien vessel began to emit a peculiar radiation signature. Commander, they're charging something big, Diaz warned. Energy readings off the charts. Hayes didn't hesitate. Full power to forward shields. Prepare for impact. The alien beam that followed was unlike anything the crew had ever seen. A swirling vortex of energy that seemed to distort space itself as it approached. It struck the Indomitable with catastrophic force. Shields failed. Okafor shouted over the sound of exploding consoles. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Emergency force fields engaged. Hayes gripped her command chair as the ship bucked violently. Return fire, all weapons. Target their central core. The Indomitable unleashed everything in its arsenal: phase cannons, quantum torpedoes, and another volley of kinetic penetrators. The combined assault overwhelmed the alien vessel's defenses, piercing deep into its structure. For a moment, the crystalline ship pulsed brighter than ever, its light almost blinding on the view screen. Then, abruptly, the light dimmed, and the massive vessel began to drift. "Their power systems are failing," Sato reported. They're retreating, Commander." Hayes watched as the damaged alien ship slowly turned away from the Indomitable, its movements sluggish and uncoordinated. "Track them. I want to know where they're going." "Commander," Diaz called out, his voice tense. "We're receiving a transmission. I think it's from them." The translation matrix is struggling, but a series of sounds filled the bridge. Clicking, humming tones interspersed with what might have been words. "They're called the Zithran," Diaz said slowly, reading the translation as it appeared on his screen. They say they're surprised. They didn't expect resistance." Hayes' eyebrows rose. "They attacked us without provocation and didn't expect us to fight back." "The translation is imperfect, Commander, but they seem confused by our tactics. They're saying something about primitive solutions and unexpected efficiency." Hayes leaned back in her chair, a realization dawning. "They expected a technological display, energy weapons, advanced shields, maybe quantum phasing. They didn't expect us to use kinetic projectiles. Basically, we threw rocks at their spaceship," Lieutenant Sato said with a grin. "Very fast rocks," Hayes corrected, unable to suppress a small smile of her own. "And sometimes that's all you need." Her expression grew serious again. "Send a message to Earth Command. First contact with new species, hostile. Designate them Zithran based on their transmission. We've repelled their initial advance, but I don't think they're done with us." As the damaged Zithran vessel disappeared into the darkness of space, Hayes couldn't shake the feeling that they had just survived the opening move in a much larger game. Across the vast distance of space, aboard the Zithran vessel Eternal Luminance, Fleet Commander Thrixva reviewed the encounter with mounting disbelief. "Impossible," he chittered, his crystalline exoskeleton flashing with patterns of agitation. "A single ship, barely a quarter of our size, using primitive kinetic weapons." Science Director Zil Nera gestured with her sensory appendages toward the holographic display showing the battle damage. "The data is clear, Commander. Their approach was unexpected. Our defenses are optimized for energy dissipation and quantum countermeasures, as are those of all advanced species. The use of accelerated mass was archaic. Archaic but effective," Thrixva admitted reluctantly. "What do we know of these creatures?" "They call themselves humans," Zil Nera replied. "They have been exploring this sector for less than 3 decades. By all measures, they should be at least 4 evolutionary cycles behind our technology." Thrixva's sensory spines quivered with intrigue. Yet they defeated a Luminance-class vessel. "How?" "I believe," Zil Nera said carefully, "that while technologically less advanced in some areas, they possess a quality our kind has not needed for millennia." "And what is that?" "Adaptability born of conflict. Our histories show that species who face continuous existential threats develop unique problem-solving capabilities. The humans' historical records indicate they spent thousands of years fighting amongst themselves before reaching the stars." Thrixva considered this. "So they are dangerous." "They are interesting," Zil Nera corrected, "and potentially valuable. The Confederation has not encountered such novel thinking in many cycles." The fleet commander's crystalline form pulsed with decision. "Inform the High Conclave. We will need the Armada for a proper assessment of human capabilities." As the Eternal Luminance limped home, carrying news of the unexpected defeat, the seeds of a confrontation that would reshape galactic understanding were already taking root. Both species were preparing, in their own ways, for a reckoning. The humans, with their tenacity and ingenuity. The Zithran, with their overwhelming technological superiority and newfound curiosity. And at the center of it all was the UES Indomitable and Commander Eliza Hayes, who had just entered the history books as the first human to defeat an alien warship in direct combat, using nothing more sophisticated than very fast rocks. The challenge of diplomacy. 2 weeks after the encounter with the Zithran vessel, the UES Indomitable maintained position at the edge of the Arcturus system, its battle damage still visible despite round-the-clock repair efforts. Commander Hayes stood in the observation lounge, hands clasped behind her back as she watched the approaching diplomatic shuttle. "I still think this is a mistake," she said to the holographic image of Admiral Chen floating beside her. "The Zithrans attacked without provocation. Diplomacy seems premature." The Admiral's weathered face remained impassive. "The Security Council disagrees, Commander. We need to understand what we're facing before this escalates further." Hayes gestured toward the stars. "They're already escalating, sir. Our long-range sensors have detected significant movement in Zithran space. They're mobilizing. All the more reason to attempt dialogue," Admiral Chen replied. "The shuttle carries my brother, Ambassador Marcus Chen. He's our best diplomat. If anyone can find a peaceful resolution, it's him." Hayes nodded reluctantly. Marcus Chen's reputation preceded him. The architect of 3 interspecies treaties, including the delicate negotiations with the notoriously paranoid Vex Collective. If anyone could talk the Zithrans down, it was him. "The shuttle has docked, Commander," Lieutenant Seto's voice announced over the comm. "Ambassador Chen requests your presence in Conference Room 1. Hayes straightened her uniform. "Understood. I'm on my way." Ambassador Marcus Chen was a study in contrasts to his military brother, slender where the Admiral was broad, contemplative where the Admiral was decisive. Yet when Hayes entered the conference room, she recognized the same piercing intelligence in his eyes. "Commander Hayes," he greeted her, extending his hand. "A pleasure to meet the hero of first contact." "Not how I'd describe it, Ambassador," Hayes replied, shaking his hand firmly. "We survived, nothing more." Chen smiled knowingly. "Modesty is admirable, but let's not understate what happened. You revealed a critical vulnerability in supposedly superior alien technology and successfully defended human territory. That's significant." Hayes gestured for them to sit. "What's your assessment of the Zithrans?" "Ambassador, Earth Command's intelligence is limited." "Based on what we've gathered," Chen said, activating a holographic display, "the Zithran Confederation spans at least 12 star systems. Their society appears to be hierarchical, with significant emphasis on technological achievement. They've had space travel for approximately 2,000 years. 2,000 years. Hayes frowned. Then why are they only now expanding into this sector? That's what interests me, Chen replied. From what we can tell, the Zithrans have been relatively isolated by choice. Something has changed. Their conversation was interrupted by Lieutenant Diaz's voice over the comm. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from Zithran space. They're requesting to speak with the ambassador. Hayes and Chen exchanged glances. Put it through, Hayes ordered. The holographic display shifted to show a Zithran, crystalline exoskeleton glittering under artificial light, multiple appendages moving in complex patterns. The translation matrix worked for several seconds before converting the alien's clicks and hums into English. I am High Diplomat Zil Nara of the Zithran Confederation, the alien announced. I speak with the authority of the High Conclave. Ambassador Chen stepped forward. I am Ambassador Marcus Chen, representing the United Earth Alliance. We welcome this opportunity for dialogue. The Zithran's appendages twisted in what might have been skepticism. The High Conclave has reviewed the encounter between our vessels. We find your species anomalous. In what way? Chen asked carefully. You employ primitive kinetic weapons alongside advanced faster-than-light technology. Your tactics defy conventional progressive development. You are unpredictable. Chen nodded thoughtfully. Different species evolve along different technological paths. Humans have always maintained diverse approaches to problem solving. This diversity interests us, Zil-Nera admitted. However, it also presents concerns. Unpredictability is potentially destabilizing to galactic order. Hayes tensed at the implied threat, but Chen maintained his diplomatic composure. Perhaps we could discuss these concerns in person. I propose a formal diplomatic meeting on neutral territory. The Zithran's crystalline form pulsed with light. The High Conclave has already determined that further study of humans is necessary. A delegation will arrive at your colony world of New Horizon in 7 of your days. Prepare appropriate reception. Before Chen could respond, the transmission ended. That wasn't a request, Hayes noted grimly. It was a notification. Yes, Chen agreed, his expression troubled. And the choice of New Horizon is concerning. It's one of our most developed colonies, but also dangerously close to what we believe is Zithran space. Hayes turned to her communications officer. Contact Earth Command immediately. Inform them of the Zithran's intended diplomatic mission to New Horizon. And then get me everything we have on the colony's defenses. While Hayes and Chen prepared for the Zithran delegation's arrival. Deep within Zithran space, the High Conclave was engaged in heated debate. The humans represent an anomaly that cannot be ignored. War Minister Krevdol insisted, his crystalline form pulsing with aggressive red light. Their technological development pattern is chaotic, unpredictable. They achieved faster-than-light travel centuries before they should have, yet still rely on primitive kinetics in combat. Science Director Zil-Nera countered. This very unpredictability makes them valuable subjects for study. They solve problems differently than any species we've encountered. Study through conquest, Krevdol suggested. We must understand their capabilities before they become a threat to Confederation stability. The elder of the Conclave, Shinva, whose crystalline form had witnessed 3 centuries of Zithran expansion, raised an appendage for silence. The diplomatic assessment will proceed as planned. High Diplomat Zil-Nera will evaluate these humans directly. However, he added, his form pulsing with authority, the Grand Armada will accompany the diplomatic vessel. Should the humans prove uncooperative or excessively dangerous, we will neutralize their colony as a demonstration. The decision made, the Zithran Confederation began preparations for what they viewed as a necessary security operation disguised as diplomacy. 200 warships, each larger and more powerful than the vessel Commander Hayes had damaged, assembled in high orbit around the Zithran homeworld. Back on the Indomitable, Chief Engineer Okafor approached Commander Hayes with barely contained excitement. "Commander, I think we've figured it out." Hayes looked up from the holographic display of New Horizons defenses. "Figured what out, Okafor?" "How the Zithran's energy absorption technology works, and more importantly, how to counter it." Okafor placed a data crystal on the table. Their crystalline structure doesn't just absorb energy. It redirects it through a complex lattice that essentially neutralizes the attack. So our kinetic weapons work because they physically shattered the lattice, Okafor confirmed. But we've developed something even better. The engineer activated the data crystal, displaying schematics of a modified weapons system. We're calling it the harmonic disruptor. It sends out energy pulses at precisely calibrated frequencies that cause the Zithran crystals to resonate until they fracture from within. Hayes studied the schematics with growing interest. "How soon can we have this operational?" Okafor hesitated. "That's the problem, Commander. We've only managed to modify 2 of our phase cannons for the prototype. A full retrofit would take weeks. And the Zithrans will be at New Horizon in 4 days. Hayes finished grimly. "We'll have to make do with what we have. Begin installation immediately." As the Indomitable prepared for potential conflict, Earth Command made the difficult decision to begin evacuating non-essential personnel from New Horizon. Civilian transports worked around the clock, ferrying thousands of colonists to safer systems, but the colony's infrastructure and military garrison remained. Ambassador Chen, despite the increasingly apparent military nature of the Zithran approach, continued to prepare for diplomatic engagement. "There's still a chance for peaceful resolution," he insisted during a briefing with Hayes and her senior staff. "The Zithrans clearly value knowledge and technological advancement. We need to demonstrate that cooperation would be more beneficial than conflict." Hayes respected Chen's optimism, but couldn't share it. The tactical displays showed the approaching Zithran fleet, massive, organized, and unmistakably designed for war. 200 ships, she murmured, studying the formation. "They're not coming to talk, Ambassador. No one brings that kind of firepower to a diplomatic meeting." Chen's expression grew solemn. "Perhaps not. But sometimes the greatest victories come through understanding your adversary, not destroying them." Hayes nodded, but her attention had already returned to the tactical display. Earth Command had dispatched reinforcements, but they were still days away. When the Zithran Armada arrived, the Indomitable would stand virtually alone against a force that could overwhelm New Horizons' defenses in minutes. "Prepare for the worst," she instructed her crew, "and hope the Ambassador is right." 3 days later, the Zithran fleet arrived at the edge of the New Horizons system, a constellation of crystalline vessels that outshone the stars themselves. Leading the Armada was the diplomatic vessel Eternal Truth, carrying High Diplomat Zil Nera and a delegation of Zithran scientists and warriors. As the Zithrans approached New Horizon, the true test of humanity's place among the stars was about to begin, not just of their military prowess, but of their capacity for either diplomacy or defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. The battle that changed everything. New Horizons' twin suns cast long shadows across the colony's central plaza as Ambassador Chen awaited the Zithran delegation. Beside him stood Commander Hayes, who had insisted on being present despite Chen's concerns about mixing military and diplomatic personnel at first contact. "They're already here in force," Hayes had pointed out. "Pretending this is purely diplomatic helps no one." The Zithran shuttle descended from orbit, a crystalline construct that seemed to flow rather than fly, refracting sunlight in dazzling patterns across the plaza. When it settled on the landing pad, a section of its hull simply dissolved, allowing the delegation to emerge. High Diplomat Zil Nera led the group, her crystalline exoskeleton more elaborate than those Hayes had seen in transmissions. Behind her came 4 other Zithrans, 2 with the distinctive markings of scientists, and 2 whose heavily reinforced structures suggested a military function. "Ambassador Chen," Zil Nera greeted, her translated voice surprisingly melodic. "The High Conclave appreciates your reception." Chen bowed slightly. "Welcome to New Horizon. We hope this meeting marks the beginning of productive relations between our species." Zil Nera's crystalline form shimmered in what might have been amusement. "Relations between our species have already begun, Ambassador, with combat. An unusual first impression. Sometimes the most challenging beginnings lead to the strongest alliances," Chen replied smoothly. Hayes observed the exchange with growing unease. Something in the Zithran's demeanor suggested this was more performance than genuine diplomacy. Her suspicions were confirmed when Zil Nera turned toward her. "Commander Hayes, your tactical approach against the eternal luminance was instructive. The Confederation has not encountered such methods in 7 centuries. We prefer peaceful exploration," Hayes responded carefully, "but we defend ourselves when necessary." Yes, Zil Nera's crystal structure pulsed with light. Defense, a concept with many interpretations. For instance, the High Conclave considers preemptive action a form of defense against potential threats. Chen stepped forward, sensing the dangerous turn in conversation. "Perhaps we should continue our discussions inside. We've prepared facilities that should accommodate your physiological needs." As the delegation moved toward the colony's administrative building, Hayes discreetly activated her neural link to the Indomitable. "Okafor, status of the harmonic disruptors. Online but untested in actual combat," Commander, came the engineer's reply. "We're still calculating optimal frequencies for maximum effect." "Keep working. I don't think this diplomatic mission is what it appears to be. The diplomatic talks proceeded for 3 hours, covering everything from human history to Zithran social structure. On the surface, it appeared productive, with both sides exchanging information freely. Yet Hayes noticed the Zithran scientists paying particular attention whenever human military capabilities were mentioned, and Zil-Nara repeatedly steering the conversation toward Earth's defenses and colonial distribution. When they broke for a recess, Hayes pulled Chen aside. "They're gathering intelligence, not building relations. Every question has military implications." Chen nodded grimly. "I've noticed. Their interest seems less about coexistence and more about assessment. Assessment before attack," Hayes concluded. "We need tow." Her neural link chimed with urgent priority. "Commander." Lieutenant Seto's voice came through, tense with alarm. "The Zithran fleet is repositioning. They're forming an attack pattern around the colony." Hayes turned to Chen. "It's happening. Get to the evacuation shuttle." Chen shook his head. "My place is here." "There's still a chance." "Not anymore," Hayes cut him off, then activated her external comm. "Indomitable. Battle stations. Implement Defense Protocol Omega. And get me a direct link to the Zithran flagship." When they returned to the conference room, Zil-Nara was waiting. The other Zithrans had withdrawn, and her crystalline form pulsed with what Hayes now recognized as anticipation. "Your fleet is moving into attack position," Hayes stated bluntly. "Care to explain the diplomatic purpose of that maneuver?" Zil-Nara's translation came through with perfect clarity. "The High Conclave has determined that humanity represents an unacceptable variable in galactic stability. Your unpredictable development path and aggressive potential cannot be permitted to continue unchecked." "So the diplomacy was always a pretense," Chen said, disappointment evident in his voice. "A necessary evaluation," Zil-Nara corrected. "We needed to confirm our assessment directly. Your species combines primitive impulses with advanced capability, a dangerous combination that the Confederation cannot allow to spread further into the galaxy." Hayes stepped forward. "And now?" "Now, Commander, we will neutralize this colony as a demonstration. The remainder of your species will be contained within your home system until proper oversight can be established." Zil-Nara's form brightened. "Resistance would be unwise. Our Armada consists of 200 vessels, each significantly more powerful than the single ship you damaged through fortunate tactics." Hayes maintained her composure. "Before you make that decision, you should be aware that we've been studying your technology since our first encounter. We've learned a great deal about your crystalline structures and their vulnerabilities." For the first time, uncertainty flickered through Zil-Nara's pulsing lights. "An empty threat. No species could develop effective countermeasures so quickly. Humanity specializes in adaptation," Hayes replied. "It's what we do best." She activated her neural link. "Indomitable. Status of harmonic disruptors. Final calibrations complete, Commander," Okafor responded. "Targeting solutions locked on the 3 nearest Zithran vessels." "Execute," Hayes ordered. Above the colony, the Indomitable fired its modified phase cannons, instead of the standard energy beam. The weapons emitted pulses of precisely modulated energy that struck the nearest Zithran warships. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, starting from the point of impact, fracture lines spread across the crystalline hulls like cracks in ice. Within seconds, the massive vessels began to break apart from within, their energy distribution systems turned against them. On the surface, Zil-Nara's form flickered with what could only be shock. Impossible. The resonance patterns. You couldn't have decoded them so quickly. "As I said," Hayes replied, "adaptation is our specialty." The Zithran diplomat's next words were drowned out by an emergency transmission from the Indomitable. "Commander, the remaining Zithran vessels are charging weapons. They're targeting the colony directly." Hayes turned to Chen. "Now you evacuate." "That's an order, Ambassador." This time, Chen didn't argue. As he hurried toward the emergency shelter, Hayes faced Zilnera. Your fleet outnumbers us, but we've proven we can hurt you. Stand down, and we can still find a peaceful resolution. Zilnera's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been regret. The decision is not mine to make, Commander. The High Conclave has determined that your species must be contained. Above them, the Zithran Armada prepared to fire on the defenseless colony. The Indomitable, though armed with its new weapon, could not possibly target all 200 enemy vessels in time. It was at this moment that Commander Hayes made a decision that would alter the course of human-Zithran relations forever. Okafor, she ordered through her neural link, activate the resonance cascade. There was a pause before the engineer responded. Commander, that's untested. The simulations suggest it could affect all crystalline structures within the system. We don't know if we can control the effect. We're out of options, Hayes replied grimly. Execute the cascade. Aboard the Indomitable, Chief Engineer Okafor activated the ship's most desperate measure, a modified version of the harmonic disruptor designed to create a propagating wave of resonance that would spread from ship to ship throughout the Zithran fleet, using their own communication network as a transmission medium. The effect began slowly, with subtle vibrations running through the nearest Zithran vessels. Then, as the resonance built upon itself, the vibrations intensified. Crystalline structures throughout the fleet began to emit high-pitched tones, visible fractures spreading across their surfaces. In the colony's conference room, Zilnera's exoskeleton started to vibrate visibly. What have you done? She demanded, her translation breaking up. Created a resonance cascade that exploits the interconnected nature of your fleet's communication systems, Hayes explained. Each ship amplifies the effect and passes it to the next. You can stop it by completely shutting down your communication network. The Zithran diplomat's form pulsed with rapid, chaotic patterns as she transmitted emergency orders to the fleet. One by one, the Zithran vessels went dark, severing connections to halt the spreading resonance. When it was over, 27 Zithran ships had been critically damaged, their crystalline structures compromised beyond repair. The rest floated in silence, their systems temporarily offline to prevent further damage. Zilnera regarded Hayes with what might have been a new form of respect. You could have destroyed our entire fleet. That wasn't our goal, Hayes replied. If it had been, we wouldn't have revealed the weakness in time for you to counteract it. A demonstration, then, the Zithran concluded, similar to what we intended for your colony. With one key difference, Hayes pointed out. Ours didn't require any loss of life. For several long moments, the Zithran diplomat was silent, her crystalline form pulsing with complex patterns that the translation matrix couldn't interpret. Finally, she spoke. The High Conclave must reevaluate. Your species is not what we anticipated. Perhaps, Hayes suggested, that's because you approached us with preconceptions. You saw our technological diversity as chaotic rather than adaptive. You interpreted our defensive capabilities as aggression. And you have proven those capabilities extend beyond our models, Zilnera acknowledged. The High Conclave calculated that your kinetic weapon success was anomalous, a statistical outlier that could not be replicated. We were incorrect. Ambassador Chen returned in time to hear this exchange. Seizing the diplomatic opening, he stepped forward. This misunderstanding nearly led to tragedy for both our species, but it also presents an opportunity to begin again with better understanding. In the days that followed, the damaged Zithran vessels were assisted by human engineers who worked alongside their alien counterparts to stabilize the affected crystalline structures. The resonance cascade had revealed vulnerabilities in Zithran technology, but the collaborative repair efforts highlighted human ingenuity and compassion, qualities the Zithrans had not expected from a species they had classified as aggressive. 1 month later, Commander Hayes stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable, watching as a new type of Zithran vessel approached, smaller, designed for scientific exploration rather than warfare. The science vessel Harmonious Inquiry requests permission to dock. Commander, Lieutenant Dias reported. They're carrying High Scientist Zil Nera and a research team. Hayes smiled slightly. Permission granted. Inform Ambassador Chen that our guests have arrived. As the Zithran vessel docked with the Indomitable, Hayes reflected on the strange path that had led to this moment. What had begun as a hostile encounter had transformed into something neither species had anticipated, the beginning of genuine collaboration. The Zithrans, with their 2,000 years of technological advancement, had encountered something their crystalline logic hadn't prepared them for. A younger species whose greatest strength lay not in overwhelming force or perfect efficiency, but in adaptability, creativity, and the unique perspective that came from evolving through both cooperation and conflict. And humanity, still finding its place among the stars, had gained not just a powerful new ally, but a profound lesson. Sometimes, the most effective demonstration of strength isn't destroying an enemy, but showing them a better alternative. When Zil Nera emerged from the airlock, her crystalline form now bearing the distinctive markings of a scientific rather than diplomatic role, Hayes stepped forward to greet her. "Welcome aboard the Indomitable," the commander said. "This time, I hope, under more favorable circumstances." The Zithran's crystalline structure pulsed with what Hayes had learned to recognize as agreement. "Indeed, Commander. The High Conclave has determined that there is much our species can learn from each other." "I couldn't agree more," Hayes replied. As human and alien walked together into a future neither had imagined possible just months before, a future born from the day a galactic fleet had dared to challenge a human warship, and in doing so, discovered that true strength sometimes lies in knowing when not to fight.